and then slipstreaming by. That just doesn't apply here. The slipstream, the drafting doesn't work. These guys are going for it right now.
Into turn, and now they're on the wall. Pearson is still going. Benny Parsons coming down onto the apron. Earnhardt is slowed down up onto the wall. The yellow flag will come out, but it's a race to the start-finish line from here. Whichever car gets there first will win the race. Pearson is still running in car number 1, but he's slowing down. Forget about Bonnet on the left of the screen. He's a lap behind. The question is whether David Pearson can get there first. Out of the car behind him, Terry Labonte, 44.
Oh, Labonte. I think it was Labonte. Do you? I can't tell. Geez, this is Labonte's race.
Are they going to give him a checkered flag? Yes, they are. Terry Labonte gets the checkered flag. He has not led at any point during the race. He only led for the last lap under the caution flag.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is episode 14 of Dirty Air, your number one podcast for all DFS gambling-related NASCAR talk. Definitely going to be an interesting podcast today, I can tell you off the bat. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Baumel, Gambling DFS Tips on Twitter. As always, I'm joined by the two-headed monster. The first head is Jason, DFS NASCAR. Jason, what's up?
Hey, what's up, guys? Just sitting here watching these last 30 laps of this Pro Invitational iRacing, and excited to talk about some Darlington Raceway this weekend.
And as always, Brandon Cruz. Brandon Cruz DFS is here as well. Brandon, what's up?
Howdy.
Well, before we get into last week, I will say, since Jason just brought up iRacing, I don't know if you guys saw, but it was very funny. The Wood brothers tweeted something like hoping for a clean night tonight, and then like Matty D tweeted right after like, well, unfortunately, I just wrecked half the field in turn 1 of lap 1. So sorry, guys.
Yeah,
but that's the beauty of iRacing is, they can have a little bit of fun with it too. But all right, this is the first question I ask every week. This week is going to be a little different because I know we're going to get into a big conversation about it. Jason, your thoughts on the race last week? Was it a good race? Was it a bad race? And then obviously we'll get into this Tyler Reddick tire issue at some point as well.
It was a good race for a while. I was fine with as the way the race went. It was fun to watch. A lot of side-by-side racing. It was a good race up until the Tiregate debacle, which...
So before we get into that, and Brandon, I'll get into that with you as well, but Brandon, outside of the tire debacle, before it happened, everything, did you think it was a good race?
I thought it was the best race of the year so far.
Because we saw a dominant car go through the field and basically dominate the race, is that why?
Well, not just that, but there was passing. There was side-by-side passing. You could pass, back in the field. Without this practice, whoever arrives off the trailer is faster, but then teams will make changes throughout the race, say Kyle Busch, say Kevin Harvick. And you saw these teams, they were able to pass in the long run. Sure, it was difficult. It's difficult with the aero package, but they were able to pass. People couldn't pass Larson just because he was the fastest car. The aero package still didn't help, but this was the closest to racing that we've seen this whole year. This and Atlanta, in my opinion, have been the two best races.
Those to me are definitely very fun races to watch. Is when the run progresses and you see cars moved towards the front because they have a better longer run car and cars fade. Those are definitely exciting races, and I thought that's what definitely made for entertaining TV, just to see who's moving. But then we got an interesting ending. But typically like what we see with NASCAR is restart, wreck at the end.
So okay, Jason. So for the casual fans or for those who may or may not have watched or kind of just followed, I'll let you set it up. We can call it Tiregate. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I'll let you set up exactly what happened. Give your side of how you think it progressed, of right, wrong, what NASCAR did, and then and I'll let Brandon go after.
Well, what was there? Probably about 50 laps to go. Maybe it was the last pit cycle. Green flag pit stop started. Leaders had pit. You had a few guys who typically try to stretch it out. This is what happened. Tyler Reddick pits. Tire gets away from him, rolls out into the infield, and sits there. As a NASCAR fan, longtime NASCAR fan, that's a caution. That's always been a caution. Should be a caution. The caution's coming. So if you're Chris Buescher, if you're Ricky Stenhouse, you're going to stay out and try to stretch it out because that's what you typically see. The caution didn't come. They let it ride out until everybody pits, and then they throw the caution. And this is where everything went south, because it's like if you're going to throw a caution, you throw it immediately, or you don't throw it at all. I mean, if it's a hazard, it's a hazard. It's a hazard on lap 251, and it's a hazard on lap 271. I mean, you can't wait to throw the caution. I don't understand the logic. I know the broadcast was trying to explain it like it's happened before. Like I said, I know I've been asking for it, and I can remember like slightly it happening in the past, like, but it was always like a couple laps. Like there was like one guy out, and you knew he was coming. Like that's what I can remember happening. I can't remember it stretching 20 laps before they finally. I don't know if it was that long, but it felt like that long.
Okay, so, and Brandon, before we get into your side of what you think happened, did you think it was a pretty accurate description of what happened from Jason?
Yeah, and I also want to bring up the fact that, any sports betting, any lineups, like all that's a moot point in this conversation. Like I said in my video, and I made the video specifically because I didn't want to ruin this podcast with just rants for half an hour. But I stated that, up in the control tower, I know David Hoots isn't there. He was about the only control guy that I knew the name of. So whoever the main control guy is right now, him and his team, obviously somebody saw the tire go into the grass. And so, in that booth, the question was, hey, there's a tire in that grass. And the head over there was like, we're just gonna let it ride. We're not gonna throw a yellow. And then, somebody else in that asked the question, are you sure? We've never done that before. And then so race control is just like, no, we're gonna choose when this yellow comes out. We're just gonna let it ride. We're just gonna let it ride. We're not gonna call a yellow. But yeah, like Jason said, in the past they've waited slightly when they know the last car is going to come in a pit. They've already said that, but it basically just turned into a member measuring contest between Buescher and NASCAR. Buescher was needing that yellow to come out, and NASCAR refused to throw it until the quote-unquote caution cycle had gone through. But in that span, that ended up being like 15 laps. And so a caution for that tire is pretty null and void if it's a safety issue, because you just let them run 15 green laps over that. Regardless of how small the likelihood of somebody going down and hitting that tire and flinging it into a pit stall, it's either too dangerous to race or it's not dangerous at all. Yet again, going back to NASCAR, caring about driver safety, caring about the safety of the sport. They actively chose not to throw the yellow. And they did it to manipulate the race. They did not like how the race was going. And I'm going to die on that hill.
Well, here's the issue that, I have with it, as, if you're NASCAR, maybe them not throwing the caution and letting the pits happen, maybe it's the right call. But the thing is they have to be transparent with that up front to the drivers. It should not come as a surprise to the drivers in the field. Just like at Bristol when they had to go to single file restarts, that should not have been a surprise to the drivers in the field. That should have been communicated well beforehand. They should have been aware that this was going to be a possibility in the race. And just like this, they should be aware that, hey, from now on, loose tires in the infield, in the middle of pit stops, we're going to let it probably run out. So don't count that as your strategy. Then Buescher knows, but just to on a whim do something that you typically don't do is just, that's where they dropped the ball, in my opinion. And then, like I said, whether waiting for the caution, waiting for the pits is the right call or not, that's mute. You have to, if the precedent's been set, you have to establish it in the driver meetings. It shouldn't be a surprise to those guys.
And see, that's the part, and obviously not trying to put this in a weird way, but out of the three of us, I obviously am the one that am just watching a race and seeing what I see. That's almost where I kind of differ from Brandon, where I feel like we're giving NASCAR too much credit. When we go back to what Jason said with the single file Bristol, I think it's just NASCAR just being stupid and not knowing what they want to do and not making up their mind. I don't think they're manipulating the race because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, it almost seems like if they would have thrown the caution right away, it would have hurt Larson, wouldn't it have?
Well, no, because Larson pitted, so if they throw the yellow, obviously it happens so long, depending on when they throw the yellow and Buescher or whoever's staying out to lead, they're going to get the advantage. Say if they end up laughing Larson and they throw a yellow, which I think that's the explanation that they gave out, is because they didn't want to punish the leaders who had already gone into pit, who were technically already passed, or who would have been not trapped a lap down.
Yeah, but they would have had to take the wave around.
Yeah, they either would have had to take the wave around, or if they had already passed the leader at the time, they pitted and then fly by Stenhouse or Buescher, and the caution comes out. Well, then they're going to have older tires compared to Buescher, who's just going to go in. So, it hurt so many different people, and the people who were hurt by it changed the longer it went on.
Yeah, and definitely the restarts, obviously at the end of the race, never help these things. But I mean, we can all agree that the tire in the infield was going to call a caution. Was going to be a caution. Like, I mean, that sucked. That got away. I mean, there was no doubt that was going to be a late race caution, which sucks. But it should have been immediately. Like, it should have been instant. And I just don't understand why they wouldn't have done it. And I know, like, I mean, I obviously listened to your video and watched it because I love a good Brandon Cruz rant. Like, I really do. I love to listen to it. But I mean, the whole, like, in my opinion, like, I know you touched on how, like, they did it because they didn't want Larson to win. But I mean, I think the quicker they call that caution, the worse it is for Larson. So I think if that was the point, then they would have called it right away.
And Larson had the best car. Like, he had already gone through the field. It's not even this, like. So, I believe NASCAR is actively rooting against Larson because the people that I know that I've asked have told me that, hey, they would like Larson to technically, not be as good as he is. Did they throw that yellow to purposely not have Larson, lead the race or be fast? No. But their only chance for Larson to not win the race was to have a lot of restarts because we saw Larson throughout the entire day. That's his only struggle. That's the only time anybody could pass him. That was the only chance for that to happen. On top of that, what is NASCAR like? What do they turn every race into? A green-white check? I don't even know why these races are over 100 laps. Like, every race should just be 20 laps.
If they're that actively against Larson, why wouldn't they have just blackballed him from the sport? Like, NASCAR's a perfect sport where they could have just been like, you're not coming back.
They did.
For a year.
Well, yeah, because of the pressure, and they saw him whooping ass in World of Outlaws and everything like that.
See, because I agree with your point that I don't think NASCAR wants Kyle Larson to be the face of NASCAR, but I think they want as many quality upper tier cars that they can get to increase the racing level. So that was kind of the point of your video where you kind of said two different points, and one I didn't agree with, one I did agree with, where one was you were saying that if they were trying to manipulate the race was to hurt Kyle Larson, which I don't think it's as much as your second point, which you said was if they're trying to manipulate the race, it's because it was a boring race and NASCAR likes these elite cautions and all that. That's what I think is if they were trying to manipulate the race, that's what they did.
We all know.
Correct.
I'm sorry, but we all know we've seen the phantom late race yellow flags, and that, from a DFS standpoint, is where I think this gets frustrating, right? Because, like, you put in the research, you figure out who the fastest cars are, and you can hit in a lot, but then it all comes down to a crapshoot in the last 30 laps on hopefully your guys don't wreck.
But
that's
even with that,
and the tire, like I said, that was going to be a caution regardless. So I mean, this instance wasn't like NASCAR just deciding to throw a caution because I mean, they can't. That's always been a caution. I mean, I guess I mean I would have what I said is like why didn't like somebody from Bowman's crew go out and grab that tire and not let the caution happen because I mean they were already running like shit anyway. Do a solid for Larson, and we don't get the caution.
We were talking about that earlier, Brandon, where Bowman's crew should have ran out there. Chris Buescher's crew should have ran out to try and stop Bowman's crew from getting the tire. And then you all of a sudden, now you've got a whole other spectacle, inside this race. But even, Jason, back to your point where you were saying it is frustrating. It's 100% frustrating. But the other side of it is you guys nailing the right car. I mean, Kyle Larson finished, 15th, and he still had 100 DK points? It's not like it's a completely wasted day. I'm pretty sure Kyle Larson was optimal in almost every lineup.
I think he hurt more in FanDuel. FanDuel, if you had Larson, it killed you. It kills you in FanDuel because you don't have all those fastest laps. But yeah, DraftKings, I mean, Larson falling back didn't kill you in cash unless you had a lot of weak spots in your lineup. Because I'm pretty sure probably every lineup that cash has Larson in it.
So, Brandon, let me see how I can ask this question without getting because as Jason said, I love a good Brandon Cruz rant, but I'm going to try and control how long it would be here. What from this incident will you take going forward in evaluating NASCAR, evaluating DFS, evaluating everything as a whole of how you play it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so look, I started my stuff as somebody who wanted to log his opinion, mainly for my own usefulness. Like I wanted to say what I thought would happen and have like an archive to come back, listen to myself, see what I could have done differently, and so on and so forth. I happened to get a following on YouTube about that, or people wanted to listen to me. I never went out to be a tout. I never went out to be, this fantasy guru guy or whatever. And I know I don't mean the fantasy gurus. I just mean in general. Like I didn't go out of my way to become a tout. People just happen to listen to me. You know, these are my opinions. And so NASCAR, look, they want action. They love wrecks. They love highlights. They want the end of their races to be close as they can be. Doesn't matter what the race has been all day. As long as the finish is close, and as long as people talk about the finish of the race, that's all they want. And that's really, you know, like, I feel like they're using the drivers and the teams and everything to make this like a big WWE match. They want highlights. Very similar to what NBC does, of where they just scream the entire time in the race. They want highlights and stuff. And NASCAR going out of their way to promote finishes or promote things like that hurts the legitimacy of, you know, NASCAR as a racing, you know, association, as an establishment, as a sport, because it's really leaning more towards entertainment than, you know, an actual fair competitive sport.
I mean, I'm not like, okay, we know like the phantom cautions and stuff happen to make these things closest, but I mean, it would be a lot better for NASCAR just to come out and be open about it and be like, hey, there's going to be a fourth stage now, and it's the last 30 laps of every race, and just let it be that. Then we all know it going in. And
that's the only reason stages are here. That's the only thing. That's the only reason. It's to bring the groups back together. You know why that is? Because they tried the fucking caution clock out. Because they wanted to group up the cars again. And then when people said, oh, well, that's ridiculous, they're going to have a caution every 20 minutes. Okay, well, we'll just do it in thirds. We'll bring out 2 of them per race.
But I mean, as a fan, though, restarts are exciting. I mean, as a fan, like, it sucks for DFS, but I mean, as a fan watching the race, like, in the crowd, if you went to a race, like, you get green, white, checker, you're like, fuck yeah, it's green, white, checker, baby. I mean, right?
Which, yeah, for a fan, I want flips every week. I want gigantic wrecks. I want crashes. Oh, but what about the driver safety? Well, I want excitement. You know, that's what NASCAR is doing. Like, the only reason they can get away with that because they haven't killed someone the last 20 years. You know, like.
But aren't we putting NASCAR under an unfair microscope? Because you're acting. I feel like every sport does this. Like when I was talking to people the other day, it's like the NBA wants the Lakers in the playoffs. All of a sudden, LeBron James is going to start getting foul calls. Like, I understand, like, just trying to be more open with this kind of stuff, but I feel like it's the money. It's every professional sport. It's like you're trying to get the best teams or the best product you can, and sometimes it comes across as this like scripted WWE thing. But it's like you know, you don't want the NBA doesn't want the, you know, Milwaukee Bucks and I don't know, like the Denver Nuggets or, you know, 2 smaller market. You know, it's how NASCAR is. NASCAR doesn't want somebody being, you know, 5 seconds ahead. And I mean, it's just, I think it's every sport almost. I agree that I think NASCAR is trying to do that at certain points, especially with some fandom cautions. But I mean, couldn't we say that across the majority of professional sports?
Let me ask you this, Ryan. Do you know of any other sport, quote unquote sport, that I watch?
Well, now horse racing, but outside of that, no.
So exactly. So I don't watch the NBA. Like,
so I think that's my point. I think it's a professional sports thing.
Yeah, the thing that I went back with NASCAR is like I'm not going to watch. I'd much rather go watch, you know, local short track racing. I'll go get flowracing.tv or any other, you know, live stream provider if I want to go watch racing. I don't need NASCAR, and that was another point. Like, I'm here because. Either A, people like point A, people like listening to me talk, and then people also support me, you know, voicing my opinion week to week, either on DraftKings or just racing in general. You know, I have a Patreon that is supported by people that support me. Like, hey, you know, these people help me get, you know, Netflix, Hulu, pay off some bills or go into my savings. Like, people are paying me for this, and so that's like why reason I'm still here. I really don't care about Darlington this weekend. I really don't. Everybody knows I haven't liked NASCAR the last 15 years. You know, like NASCAR under the Winston brand was the truest form of racing. You know, and now it's getting more and more towards entertainment to where I don't want to watch. I don't want to watch the Lakers. I don't want to watch powerhouse teams. You know, not even powerhouse teams, but, you know, storylines. Like NBA wants certain teams there. That's just how it is. They draw the most viewerships. You know, baseball, it certainly helps that the Yankees can just keep grabbing everybody else. Now, if they get to the whatever it is, the World Series, you know, That's what
The
they
Super
do.
Series.
Yeah, whatever it is, I mean, that's just how it is, man.
Hey, and also, Ryan, like about your point about like the other sports that do stuff, there is like obviously shady shit that you see happen, right? But the difference is after the race, the following day on Twitter, I posted a fake breaking news like type deal and acted like NASCAR came out and decided not to throw the caution on lap 231, and they've rewarded Kyle Larson the race winner based on average speed. And there were legitimately people in the comments who thought I was 100% serious, who believed.
Well, I think that says more about NASCAR Twitter.
I mean, it doesn't like I can't see like if it was the NFL and put out something obviously fake, like people wouldn't expect it from the NFL, but people see that as NASCAR. I'm like, well, I could believe that.
No, and I get that because NASCAR has the ability to literally manipulate a race. Like the NBA, with 4 minutes left in a game, if the score is 95-75, they can't all of a sudden give a team 20 points. You know what I mean? They can't actually manipulate the game to that point.
Right. They can't say you got to sit down LeBron James for the rest of the game now.
Exactly. The one thing I do want to talk a little bit about, because we mentioned it a little bit, Jason, during the whole Tiregate thing, and we can get into it a little bit more if there's anything else. But Jason, once again, Chris Buescher he's in a pretty fast car. He seems to be running towards the top, a decent amount of time. I mean, Chris Buescher looks like he's here to stay, right?
He's a mile and a half. So we've been talking about it, and we've been hitting on it all season. We've been saying we're going to keep playing Buescher on these mile and a half, and he keeps coming out and showing up for us. I mean, obviously, like but he was in position a few times, right? I mean, he could have caught a lucky breaking with caution and got track position that way. He ran solid, like the majority of the race, but obviously the end kind of helped him when he did happen to get a bunch of wrecks in front of him, kind of bailed him out and finished top 7. But yeah, there's a lot of good plays. I think. I mean, I think even Stenhouse. I've joked Stenhouse was almost a good play like 3 different times this week. This race. So.
And so Brandon, Chris Buescher, these mile and a halves, has he been good because he's Chris Buescher or because of the 17 car, or a combination of two?
It's a combination of Roush Fenway and their engine program. I mean, you've seen them. They're putting all their time into this. We talked about it really early in the year because the next generation car is right around the corner. And there's been a parts freeze, and that's helped teams like this kind of catch up to where they are. And so I would argue that Roush and everybody is like pretty much all in on this car because they know that they're going to have to try and catch back up to people when the new car comes around. Even if everybody's on an even slate, there's teams out there that are going to put more money into R&D than Roush is going to be able to put in. And so, like, I would imagine that most of their eggs are in this basket for 2021.
Hey guys, Richard Petty Motorsports just won a fucking race. Their 200th NASCAR or whatever they just won. Eric Jones won the Pro Invitational.
Yeah, they just dumped
the
Timmy
first
Hill.
virtual one.
Yeah, I just saw that they dumped Timmy Hill and won.
Fair
racing. Like, okay, look, I know Brian France has been removed for a while, but at least he was a straight shooter. He was like, man, Logano crashing Kenseth, that was a smart move. He's playing the game right. Wrecking competitors. That's just how it is, man.
So, Brandon, you kind of brought it up briefly. Let's get into it. I think it was a good segue. The next gen car, we're seeing more and more today. Some pictures came out of the cars, basically how some of them are going to operate and what they're going to do. So it sounds like the major difference is teams are no longer building cars; they're assembling cars. The parts are all being bought from the same vendor. So it sounds like a lot of the teams are going to be on similar playing fields. What are your thoughts on this next gen car, kind of these changes to it, and do you think it's going to create some sort of an even playing field for these cars?
All right, so NASCAR went to the Truck Series and was like, okay, we don't like you guys. You guys are making way too, there's too much of spread out in skill in terms of how good these teams are. We're going to make you guys get your motors from the exact same spot. It's going to even the field out. It's going to make everybody more fair. You don't have to really build these cars from the ground up. We'll give you the body panels. We'll give you the motor. Just show up and race. And how's the Truck Series? Hugely spread out. Running the exact same type of motor. And everybody's still spread out. So it's going to be the same thing, man. Like, they said the same thing with this car. They said the same thing with the composite bodies. in Xfinity. Same thing with Car Tomorrow. It's going to even the field out.
Yeah, I've been hearing it forever.
It does.
Every new generation, this is what we go through as a fan. Oh, it's going to be all even. We're going to get all kinds of parity with this new car, which you'll probably have it maybe the first season, but good teams are going to put money into it. They're going to figure it out. They got the best engineers. They got the best people on it. If they don't have the best people, if there happens to be somebody else in another team who figures this out quicker, guess what? Bigger team's going to buy them up and pay them a lot of money to come. So money will buy the wins. Always in racing, the money buys the equipment and buys the wins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a quick, easy kind of explanation of what NASCAR thinks they're going to do versus what it's actually going to do.
I mean, IROC was really the only, IROC series. Like, if they could go to that model to where nobody even touches the fucking cars, where it's one sanctioning body that sets up all the cars and the guys hop in it and go. But that would never happen because then you get rid of all the owners, you get rid of all that.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, I do want to say you did ask who was going to win at Darlington this week. I said Derek Jones, so already 1 for 1 on the week.
Oh my God, do I have to pay you $60 for
That's 1 for 1. I'm going to write that down. So
yeah, but how many resets did they go through? How many cars? How many drivers would have died in all those crashes in the Darlington race?
I will know one thing. I don't know if this is how these cars are going to sound, but on the iRacing, I don't know how accurate it is, but they sound a lot like the IROC cars did.
So anything else from last week before we get into this week?
No, I think we've exhausted enough of last week.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Tired of losing in fantasy sports? Times are changing. Now it's just you versus the numbers. Prize Picks is the perfect place for you whether you are the biggest sports fan around or you're a seasoned vet in the daily fantasy space. On Prize Picks, you simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go over or under their fantasy projection. Think Denny Hamlin is going to win the big race? Take his over and win real cash today. Prize Picks gives you the chance to win 10 times your money for getting 4 predictions correct. Entries are so simple. They can be made in less than 60 seconds. Sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app and use code DIRTYAIR, that's DIRTYAIR, DIRTYAIR, to get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks truly is daily fantasy simplified.
All right, so let's get into this week. The Goodyear 400, Darlington Raceway. Track too tough to tame. One of, I'd say, the more famous racetracks, especially in the NASCAR circuit. I think the casual fan from outside, may not know all the tracks. Darlington's one of them you at least have heard of. 400 miles, 293 laps, 90 laps in stage 1, 95 in stage 2, 108 in stage 3. Brad Keselowski's on the pole. Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, both good weeks last week. They start 2nd and 3rd this week. Truex 4th, William Byron, and Chase Elliott round out the top 3 rows. Jason, what are your initial thoughts on this week?
Well, I mean, initial thoughts that I have going into this week and what I find is kind of quite challenging, and I'm curious to see where Brandon's at on this, is we have a different package than what we've raced at Darlington. They're doing 750 horsepower, low aero package, which we haven't really seen outside of the mile tracks in a couple years. So it's really hard to pin down on what tracks we're looking at in comparison. I mean, I'm still looking at guys who were fast this year because, I mean, feel like you still kind of go with the speed. So I'm still looking at tracks like Homestead, Atlanta from this year. But I mean, as far as what we can look at in last year, I mean, I still think you want to play guys who are good at Darlington. You can maybe, where are you at with Dover, Brandon? I mean, I think you can maybe look into Dover a little bit. I mean, obviously it's not ideal and comparable, but at least they ran the 750 horsepower package there last year.
So on the surface, looking at Darlington running this package, you obviously don't have the downforce that they've had previously here. And so is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? If you think about how a car is going to act in the corner, it's not going to have that amount of downforce that it normally has. So it might slide up more. You're going to see more guys on the wall, just how it is, especially with no practice. We saw guys wrecking last year on the first race back with no practice. Here, you're running a completely different package, more horsepower, more, you can feel the impact of the throttle more. However, with that said, maybe I would argue that the cars are naturally going to want to be looser entering the corner, but you won't necessarily have as much dirty air as you used to. This is probably going to be closer, quote unquote, to probably how the Xfinity race would look if there was actually competitive cars in that. So that's kind of how I'm going to go about it. I'm going to look at who's been fast at Kansas, Atlanta, Las Vegas. Same guys, the exact same guys last week.
Right.
I mean, that's just how it is. Look, play Larson. I don't even want to talk. Like, everybody already knows. I'm kind of just done. Like, I really don't want to waste time talking about this. But, I mean, literally, Larson starting 15th, fastest car in NASCAR right now. Fastest team, fastest guy, a guy who has been good at Darlington before in really bad equipment. Like, he should be there. Then you got guys like Kyle Busch and Truex Jr. Also, another thing is, like, I saw a lot of people being like, Kyle Busch is back and everything. Well, he ran like fourth the entire time in that race. He wasn't slow or anything. He hasn't been slow these past weeks. He's been getting better and better, understanding how to change these cars or understanding how to, get comfortable in these cars and races. So, I mean, Kyle Busch starting third. You had Truex and Chase be very fast here last year. I can't imagine 250 more horsepower compared to last year to this year is really going to make that big of a difference to these guys who are already fast at this track, to guys who already like this track. That's just me.
So, Brennan, it sounds like the guy that I have most questions about at the top, Joey Logano, he's 11-1. It sounds like you're not on Joey this week.
I don't even know how much he is. What is his?
He's
like
11-1, yeah. But even, just in that range of the Larson, Hamlin, Truex, Keselowski, it sounds like you'd rather play pretty much all of them besides Logano, right?
Yeah, Logano seems a bit too much in a sense of, if we're paying up for him, like I'm paying for Larson because I think he's going to lead laps. I'm not paying for him for his place differential. And so, do I think Logano has the same amount of upside as Larson? I would say no there. So if you're building a lineup either with Larson and then you want to take somebody in the front, either like Kyle Busch, Truex Jr., Chase Elliott, one of those guys, you're already not being able to afford Hamlin in your lineup. Like, just the build you're making is not going to be able to put Logano in your lineup. Like, you have to go out of your way to get him. And so there's just absolutely no interest for me with Logano.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about Logano is he hasn't been a guy that's shown us a lot of speed outside of the short flat tracks. I mean, yeah, granted, it's this package, but it's not this track style, and it's a completely different style of racing. But can we try a little something different this week, as far as like how we're going to go through this? Because like just looking at the last bit of 4 races at Darlington, as we've seen 4 guys score over 50 dominating points in those races. 2 guys scored over 70. So we can all pretty much agree right now that the favorite that we would all say to get those 50 dom points, if somebody has a 50 dom point day, would be Kyle Larson. So I guess let's go down and see and see where your thoughts is on where that number 2 guy lays at. For me, it's Martin Truex. I mean, a guy who's been fast all year, a guy who's starting 4th. I mean, we typically see that track position pays off at Darlington. Starting up front is great. He's had a fast car all year. He dominated this race. He dominated in the fall here last year. Typically pretty good at Darlington. So I think that would be my second guy. Who would you be picking second after Larson?
Guy probably second to Larson, and this is probably going more towards how the Darlington race kind of ran last year, would probably end up being Chase Elliott. I know it's a different package. I know it's the 550, but Chase Elliott has always been fast at Darlington recently, and obviously him and Truex got into it at the end of the last Darlington race. But you've constantly seen Elliott be one of the fastest guys like across the board. It's just because he got wrecked at Las Vegas. He had a blown engine at Atlanta. He wasn't horrible at Kansas. So
I mean, he's still struggling with fast laps on the year, right? I mean, he's not.
Everybody's struggling behind Larson.
Not like Chase is. So I mean,
yeah, but if Larson isn't leading all these laps and he's not getting all these fast laps, they're going to be spread out between the guys in the back. That's just not how the case is right now, because Larson has been that quick at the 1.5 miles or the intermediate tracks, and so like Chase Elliott at 9.2. If you want to do head-to-head between, you want to do head-to-head between Truex. I mean, they're pretty darn close. I'd much rather take the savings from Truex to Chase Elliott for maybe slightly less upside than Truex, but like 9,200. Like,
well, I'm seeing more of I'm saying Truex would be like a guy that I think could score 50 points. Like, so I think Truex is a guy like a pivot off of Larson. Right, if you're playing a non-Larson line, I think it would be Truex, and then you could still pair in a guy like Chase Elliott with him.
So, I like the question you asked, Jason. I almost kind of want to ask the opposite question of that. So, if the guys starting in the top 6, so it's Keselowski, Harvick, Busch, Truex, Byron. Well, let's go top 7. Byron, Chase, and Denny. Jason, which one of them do you think is least likely to be that number 2 Dom guy?
I would say probably William Byron. I would think would be least likely, but I like him. I don't know where he's priced at this week, but I mean, it doesn't mean he's a bad play. But I don't think I could see too much potential in Byron scoring 50 plus points, 50 plus Dom points. But I mean, I could see definitely.
He is 8,800.
I think in this range it would have to be like Truex. I think you could see Keselowski do it, but I just don't think I've seen enough speed out of Harvick yet. Kyle Busch, I mean, he was, like you said, great last week, but I have a feeling a lot of people were on him. That's what sucks about Kyle Busch last week is everybody was on him. You know, he was just so cheap, and he finally had a great day, and pretty much everybody's on him. So everybody's going to probably be on him again. Where's he priced at this week?
Kyle Busch, I believe, is in that same range he was last week. Let's see. Kyle Busch, yeah, he's 9,800, so a little higher. He's 98, Harvick's 96, so they're still kind of all in that same range, sub 10K, you know, sub the Keselowski, Truex, Hamlin, Logano, Larson guys.
And I will say, like, this weekend being as, like, it's a different package that we've seen so far this year, and it could be a week to do something a little different, because we don't really know, like Larson's always been good here, but he kind of dropped an egg in this package at Richmond. I know it's a totally different style track, but he should have been good at Richmond too. So I mean, it's not like, I'm guessing with that little bit of unknown going into this week, it's not completely crazy if you wanted to be different and fade one of these favorites and go with an underdog guy or a guy who's got less traction.
So, Brandon, taking William Byron out of that top 7, who do you think is least likely to be that second Dom guy?
I would probably say Harvick, due to the fact that Brad would probably take the outside. Unless Brad just whacks the wall entering turn 1, Brad and Busch should get by Harvick out of turn 2. Like, the inside has such a huge disadvantage here. Unless Harvick just really throws it to the bottom of the track and tries to get in front of Keselowski, but that would require him having a pretty even start right off the bat. But I would say it's Harvick. If I had to rank, say the top 5 drivers, I would actually probably put Truex first, Keselowski second, Harvick third, Kyle fourth. But just the fact that Harvick's starting second, I think that puts him at a disadvantage to get out in the very start, because he has to compete with the outside lane. Now, if he gets the lead on pit road, he would stay out there. Like, whoever's going to have the lead here, it's going to be on pit road again. I don't expect we're going to see a whole lot of passes for the lead on the actual track. Maybe like 1 or 2, but all the passes are going to be on pit road.
Yeah, I would rank them Truex, Hamlin, and Brad Keselowski up in that range.
So,
but they said
Jason,
top 6. Jason,
he said 7.
7. Did he say 7?
Yeah, he changed it to 7. That's why I squeezed him in there.
So Brandon, where would you put Denny in that your rankings?
I put him third again. I had him third last week. I'm going to roll with him third again here.
Jason, who outside of the top 15 would be most likely to acquire some Dom points or fast lap points? A couple guys that sticking out, just some names, not necessarily guys that I potentially like, but just some names that I think have some potential value. Blaney, Kurt Busch, Bowman, Christopher Bell's down here. Even Ricky Stenhouse, has had a pretty fast car. He's down. He starts 28th. Which of these guys, anybody of them, you think could lead laps?
I would think a guy who I think could probably put up some Dom points in that range would be Alex Bowman, starting 19th. I don't know, like I said, I haven't got to look at pricings yet, but he's a guy who's shown us some speed and ability to score at least, between 5 to 10 Dom points most weeks. We've seen him be competitive at the end of the race, like at Richmond, how he turned it on. This car's been pretty good all year. I could see Bowman getting up towards the front and at least getting some fast laps I think he'd probably be most likely in this range.
And he's 9.4, so I expect him to be pretty popular this week.
Yeah, that's pretty cheap, actually. I would have thought he would have been around 10K.
Yeah, I think he was 10.4, 10.2, something like that last week. I thought he was going to be a similar price, but he's one of the guys that seems about $1,000 too cheap. Brandon, is Bowman that same guy for you, or do you think anybody else there's a chance down here, even if you don't think that there's Dom points, maybe some fastest lap points from some of these guys down here?
So if you look at Bowman and you look at the high wear tracks, Atlanta Auto Club, you'll see that Bowman does pretty well here. The reason that I'm so high on Bowman on typical cookie cutter tracks is that I think that's the type of driving that Bowman excels at. Places like Kansas, places like Auto Club, places where you have a whole lot of room to make moves and stuff. I've never really been impressed by Alex's running, especially like at a race like Darlington. I feel like he's going to struggle here, and when I mean struggle, I would project him for like 8th or 9th place finish, maybe 7th, somewhere around there. But that's a struggle there, and compared to what other people are going to do in that range, I'd much rather go and pay for somebody like Christopher Bell, who has very similar upside, probably not as much attention as Alex Bowman. Even if you're looking at prices, you're going to be like, oh, well, Alex Bowman was so expensive last week, he had an alternator issue, so he wasn't able to really show his potential. I'm going to hop on him here, and I think this is a track where, as I said, I think people are going to get into the wall a whole lot, and we've seen Alex get in trouble here. The only thing pointing to him is his fast laps at high wear racetracks, but
he had 48
fastest
fastest laps in this race at last year, finished second. 18 fastest laps in the last race at Darlington, finished 6th last year. So I mean,
that was on that second one, because they did the first Darlington race, right? That was the race back from COVID, and then they did the second Darlington race. When was that? Like 2 weeks later?
No, it was right after it.
It was right after
Wednesday.
But Jimmy Johnson was like $15,000 for the start of 40th.
At the end of the year with 18 fastest laps. So that was.
I think that was more practice than anything, because you saw how he ran in that first straight. Like, I don't know, I think that's what it is. Like, I'm not going to be as high on Bowman. Like last week, I had him in like 35-40% of lineups. This week he'll be like a 25% driver.
Yeah, I'm just going through like the tracks that like I'm looking at. I mean, he runs, like you said, right around 8th or 9th at all these tracks these races that I pulled that we talked about in the beginning, with a couple upsides around third best car. So I mean, like I said, I had him projected for an 8th place finish as well, 4 dominator points. I mean, that's 51 points. I mean, like I said, if you're going to fade him for ownership and chance at the wall, I get it. But I mean, I think 50 points would be a pretty solid day for $9,200, especially when it's going to be so hard to predict who that second dominator is going to be at.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're looking for these second dom, especially these higher price guys, you're going to have to find some value somewhere. We're not necessarily going to go through every single guy, but we're going to pick and choose some guys. So Jason, I'll ask you first. One of the guys that seemed once again criminally underpriced to me, maybe he's not criminally underpriced, I don't really know what you do with him. He starts 11th, so there's not that much, spot for, it's not like he's starting 20th, kind of similar to what he was last week. He starts, 11th. Chris Buescher is $6,500. Why should I not play Chris Buescher again, Jason?
I love Chris Buescher. They're starting 11th. I mean, I got him projected for about a 12th place finish, 3 dom points. That's 34 points. I mean, that's definitely 5x value there. I mean, obviously the guy who's going to come with a lot more risk, but I just think the way he's ran so far this year, we've seen. Let's see here. Let's see what else I was looking at here. Darlington last year, he ran around. He had 20. He had 6 dom points here in this last race last year. He had the 16th, 17th best running position at Dover. So he's been right. Last year is right around like that 16th, 17th range is where he run at on this style of tracks. And I think just a step we've seen this team make, I think it's realistic to think that they'll take a step forward here and gain a few positions over that. So I don't think 12th place is out of question. I don't think he's going to run top 6, top 7, and have an extraordinary amount of upside, but I think he's going to be a low-owned guy still. I don't think a lot of people like playing an 11th place guy. So he's high risk probably, and good reward.
Brandon, same strategy for you. It's putting Larson and Chris Buescher and then figuring everything else out.
Maybe not Chris Buescher, probably Chastain, just for a little more safety net. I figure Buescher's going to do very similar to what he did at the dirt track in terms of DFS. Obviously, dirt and Darlington are 2 different things, but you had him starting 11th at the dirt race. He finished 14th, had a fast lap, and finished with 26 points. Like, that's what I'm worried about. Like, I do not want to pay $6,500 for a driver who's going to give me like 24, 26, 28 points. Like, if I'm playing Buescher, it's because I think he's going to finish inside the top 9, which would be a bit rough. Like, Buescher at that price is, I'd much rather get people who are around him in a similar price range that can give me place differential points, that I don't need him to hold on to that whole position the entire race, especially with all the good guys in the back. Like, if you look at the cars who should get in the top 10, you have Keselowski, Harvick, Truex, Byron, Elliott, Hamlin, people like Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, and once more and more of these drivers, like Ryan Blaney starting 16th, Logano starting 12th, like these guys are going to be trying to push Buescher out of that 11th place, out of that 12th place. And so if Buescher falls in line around 14th, 15th, that's a good race day. That's a good day for him, not necessarily good for fantasy.
Well, I guess it really depends on what the rest of the value looks like around that range. Because, like I said, I don't know who's priced around him to know if he's a better player than the guy who's priced around him or not.
So the initial build that I had when I was just looking at it, and I know you guys hate when I do these kind of builds because you told me that they don't work, and you're right, they never work. But I like playing Chris Buescher and Chastain together. They're 6,500 and 6,300. I think they're two guys that have top 15 potential, and it allows you to fit these other guys, these Larsons, these Bowmans, these Bells, these Chase, Kyle, those guys that realistically have top 5 and win upside. Jason, I don't see any issue with playing Chastain and Buescher together at 65. Buescher 65 and Chastain 63. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Who else is priced around that range though? You said 65.
So if we're going in this range, so I'll go down real quick. So in this $1,000 range, so Stenhouse is 76. So I'm going to go down from there. Stenhouse, Austin Dillon is 75, Reddick is 74, Newman 72, Custer 71. None of those guys kind of jumped out to me. When you get to this next range, which is where the value is. So Bubba 7K, Chris Briscoe. Chase Briscoe is 6,800. Suarez 67. Buescher 65. Chastain 63. McDowell 61. Priest 59.
I mean, Priest is going to be the chalk punt, right?
I would think so, which I think makes Chris Buescher a play like Brandon kind of said. I think people are going to see him at 11th place, and unless you're projecting him for a top 10 finish, I don't think people are going to play Chris Buescher, which makes me want to play him even more.
Yeah, I think I definitely. Yeah, you can definitely start. You're probably going to start with 2 punts. Like I said, I haven't really gotten into roster construction. There's a lot of guys that are start. If I could get off with just Prey and Ryan Priest, and then I might be able to cram in some 8K guys and 9K range, and not have to really punt twice, and that's what I'm going to do probably with him starting 29th. But yeah, I do I'll have some Buescher lineups and all that good stuff.
So Brandon, somebody else that's been pretty decent for the better part of a year, Jason made the joke last week. He basically was a good play 3 times last week. Ricky Stenhouse, $7,600. He starts towards the back this week. I think he's 28th, something like that. 27th, 28th, yeah, whatever. Brandon, what are your thoughts on Ricky Stenhouse this week?
I like Stenhouse. I like him a lot. I want to go back to the point you were just making with Buescher and those guys in the 6K range. So, like last week, playing 3 guys in 6K range was optimal, I believe. And that's just how the race played out at the end, because Larson lost many positions. It let people in the 6K range get into lineups that otherwise locked him out. The reason you even bothered with the 5 or 4K range last week was because Alfredo. You basically needed to do what he would do in that range to be the only play available in the 4 and 5K range. Here, there are no plays in the 5K other than Priest that I want to deal with. So, and there's nobody in the 4K that I want to deal with. And so I would cross off my player pool, anybody from 5,700. So that's LaJoy, that's Haley, and all the back markers down. I would just cross them off. I don't really want to deal with Alfredo because I think he struggles at this track. This does not seem like a track that's going to be very forgiving on him, even with his experience here in the Xfinity Series. I'm more worried about him losing positions here than I was last weekend, because same argument to be made, or that I made with Alex Bowman, that I think he does well on those cookie cutter tracks, the ones that don't have a whole lot of tire wear. This is a really difficult track, and so people or anyone under Ryan Priest, I'm worried about not performing. So I would just cap him off at 5,900 up for your player pool.
What was the that range in that 7K again, Ryan? Sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
The 7K, let me go back. So the 7K range, we're going up. So Bubba at 7 even, Custer at 7-1, Newman at 7-2, Reddick at 7-4, Stenhouse at 7-6. Oh, sorry, Austin Dillon at 7-5, Stenhouse at 7-6, Matty D at 7-8, and then Almirola is the first at 8K.
I think that range right there is where a lot of people are going to miss on. I think that range is where you're going to find some real, like I said, some solid plays in there. I mean, like you said, you pretty much get past Custer, but I think Custer has top 15 potential right there, starting 24th for 7K. Dillon's been running great all year. Reddick, this is a track I could see Reddick showing up at in this package, having to run that high line and getting aggressive and running well. Starting 10th, he could definitely finish around 10th. You know, these RC cars have not been bad. They've had some solid runs this year. Newman starting for the 20th at his price, he had 3, I think, top 16 finishes here at Darlington last year. We talked about the strides Roush has made. I think that range right there is going to be a very low-owned range that I think if you can cram guys in there and not do that double punt, it's definitely a way to get different. It looks like there's a lot of upside there. I mean, even Ricky, like I said, Ricky Stenhouse, great play there.
So I'll ask you in terms of that range, is this maybe a range if you're doing a 20 max lineup? I know we don't really necessarily do the 150 max or whatever, but if you're doing a 20 max, is this a range where maybe you pick a couple guys, you do 15, 20% of these guys and just hope you get the right one in the right lineup? Is that how you might play this range?
Pick
a couple and just do it.
So I start building. I just know like those guys you listed off are all guys that I had ideally that I'd wanted them priced in that 7K range to play them, and that's right where they're falling at. You know, I think there's a lot of good value in there.
So Brandon, the one guy we didn't talk about in this range, he starts 8th, so obviously not necessarily as much place differential as some of these other guys, but he's been better of late. Matty D is at 7,800. Any interest in Matty D this week?
It just depends on how. Depends on how line construction goes. Like, I mean, I don't think he's going to be a top 8 driver. I don't think he's going to have top 8 speed. He could. I mean, anybody could do well at 7,800. You know, I'd much rather go to Eric Almirola. I mean, I love Stenhouse, so I'll probably just go to Stenhouse a lot. Or a lot. If you listen to my thing, you know, I'm not going to be playing as much. That's just how it is. I don't see Matt DiBenedetto having any interest for me.
That's what the funny thing is. We sit here and we talk about, you know, lineup construction and all this, and it's like the ideal lineup construction changed 3 times in like the last 25 laps of that race, like at Kansas. I mean, like from having like at one point, like I had a lot of Larson without Denny and Larson with guys stacked with like Stenhouse and stacked with Blaney's and stacked with Keselowski's and all that. And so when Hamlin fell back and I had these guys, like it was just like that lineup construction was just beautiful, making all kinds of money. But then like another caution happens and it just totally shifts the lineup construction where now you want 3 6K guys because now Daniel Suarez got up there on top 9. You know, it's like, so I don't know how to predict what the proper lineup construction is going to look like. My theory is just to look at the guys that I think are going to be good, who I think can hit the value, and just play them. So like, as long as you keep getting close, eventually the chips are going to fall away. That's just what I keep telling myself.
And I also wanted to say before I let you talk, Ryan, like looking at the back of the field, because the back of the field is easier to predict than the front of the field, obviously. But like in the back of the field, the only guys, and going from 37th on up, I'll just say who would actually be useful or who you could actually play with confidence. Probably be Priest, Stenhouse, Almirola, Wallace, Bell, Newman, Bowman, Chastain, Kurt, Ryan, and then you get to Larson. And so that's from 14th to 28th, and it's just those guys. And so same thing can be said with the guys up front. Now, in a sense of who could actually do something. If you're looking at the top 10 drivers, like the guys who I would find a hard time doing well in this race is DiBenedetto, Austin, and Tyler Reddick. You know, like that's just how it is.
So we were talking about this earlier, Jason. It sounds like, and not necessarily getting into the actual construction of roster building, but potentially playing 2 DOMs or going along that lines. If this turns into one of those races where it's truly a 1 DOM race, I think we can all agree that it's probably Kyle Larson that would be the guy most likely to score, you know, whatever, 80, 100, whatever, however many it would be for, you know, a 1 DOM race. Who are we looking at if it's not Larson, if it is a 1 DOM race? My thought is the next most likely guy would be Truex. What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
Yeah, I think that's what we kind of touched on at the beginning of the show. But I mean, as far as like roster construction, like I would think like your safest bet, like if you're just trying to cash and playing cash games this week, is you're going to want to just pick that one main dominator, and probably lock him in as Kyle Larson, and then just around him build off of position differential. But if you're looking to score big on GPP, you're going to have to take that second dominator, and I think that's when you're going to have to start playing some of these guys like Keselowski. You're going to have to play guys like Harvick. You're going to play guys in that range who are going to rack up these dom points as well, and just really maximize your upside.
And so, Brandon, the final question I have for you: he's coming off a win. He won tonight. He starts 26th. Eric Jones, why can't he win twice in the same week?
He could, man. The entire field could wreck.
I actually like Eric Jones this week, and can I talk about Eric Jones?
Go ahead.
You're gonna take that history in a great car?
No. Listen, I mean, look. Obviously, we know he's got great history, but I mean, even besides that, it's not like Bubba ran terrible on this style of tracks last year. I mean, the tracks that I've pulled up, obviously, yeah, he didn't have a great run at the last Darlington race, but before that, Dover, average running position of 20th and 22nd at both Dover races, average finish of running position of 18th and 17th at the Darlington races. So I mean, this car was running top 20-ish with Bubba, and I think Jones's history of just, I mean, running well at Darlington. I mean, it does. We do know this is a track that takes a technique to get around. He's obviously got it. Like, he has always run well here, and I know better equipment. I mean, he just won the iRacing as well here. I mean, I know you can't take that, but I mean, there is a knack for running Darlington, and could you see? I could definitely see him finishing 18th, top 15. I could see him finishing top 15. It's like he hasn't had a top 15 run this year. He has. I don't think it's out of question to think he can show up and finish top 15. I mean, and get a couple late cautions, he could be competing for top 12, top 10. And if a lot of people, but like you said, his track history though, is that going to drive his ownership up? I don't know what's his price tag.
So I would say that was going to be the question. He's 8,200. If you're playing him, what position are you expecting?
Oh, that's probably too high for 8,200. I had no idea the price.
what a podcast, man!
But doesn't that give
on
the
us.
instant reaction everyone has though? Isn't that like, oh my god, Eric Jones is 8,200, I'm not going to play him? Like, isn't that the instant reaction everybody has?
Yeah. I guess I didn't, like I said, salaries literally came out like 10 minutes before we started recording.
Yeah,
so
something like that.
I had not looked. So man, 8,200. I would have thought like 7K. I liked him at that price, but yeah, 8,200. What the fuck are they doing? Yeah, they obviously looked at track history as well.
That's why I'm joking. Like, Jason hasn't really seen salaries, and I have 2 feet out the door. Like, what a podcast here. But Jones, like, I'll say this with Jones, like, can we just take him behind the bar and shoot him after this race if he doesn't get a top 15? Because this is his
win
track
already this season. What are you talking about? He just fucking won. What more can you ask out of him? And a Richard Petty Motorsports car, he's got a victory. That's going down. That's I believe that's going to be on Racing Reference, right? So that counts.
Well, see, Jason, what you're missing is Brandon's running out of guys, because first Newman wasn't going to get a top 10. Then it was McDowell wasn't going to get another top 5 at a super speedway. And then we just kept going back. And so now at some point he's going to be everyone.
You know how much glee I had when Chastain was running the top 5 at the end of that race? I could not wait to come on this podcast and talk about Chastain getting a top 5 finish. That
driving Chastain lost it all by himself on the trial. What a wheel, man.
He ran good. Get off of him. Like.
Okay, well, that was a perfect segue.
You better be happy he didn't catch on fire.
Oh my.
That was a perfect segue for me, Jason. I'm glad you said that, because you were ready to come on this podcast and talk. So I will now get to the portion of the podcast of our 2 and done, where I was laughed at last week, but for taking Kyle Busch. I was laughed at. Oh, I can't believe you take. I don't know. Kyle Busch won the race, won 2 stages, got a second and a third stage, basically as many points as you're going to get in a race. Kyle Busch got 59 points. Brandon, the number 1 guy who laughed at me, took Chris Bell, who had 12 points. About a fifth of the points. So, like I said, I'm just setting up this comeback. Yeah, I'm all about these ratings.
So I'm sorry. How many points are you behind us now? Are you within 100 points now?
So actually, I'm in first place now, because I made last week worth 10 times the points of the rest of the week, which I didn't tell you guys. But that's actually how it works. Is when Kyle Busch wins his first race, it's actually 10x the points. But okay, so if we get into it, Jason had Byron last week. He had 34. You had Bell, who had 12. I had Kyle Busch, who had 59 points. So The most important thing is that Jason is now back in first place. Jason is in first place. He's got 422 points. Brandon, you're at 411.
420.
I am at 334. So yes, Brandon, to answer your snarky question, I am back within 100 points of both of you. So thank you very much.
And
this
I
is
think
where
the
it
laugh
starts.
was not about the Kyle Busch pick. It was the fact that you made us pick first so we can explain what we were picking. And you end up just picking the same guy you picked the week prior.
Well, no, 2 weeks prior, because Talladega took Stenhouse.
Whatever.
But you can't criticize a man for his strategy when it works.
I'm not criticizing. I'm saying that's what caused the laugh. It wasn't that I thought you was an idiot. It's just, well, I kind of did.
Well, you thought I was an idiot way before that Kyle Busch pick, so that's fine. But sometimes you guys think about this thing too hard. The race was called the Bushy McBush.
We're beating you by 100 points. I don't think we're thinking about it too hard. I think you're not thinking about it hard enough.
Excuse me, Jason. You're beating me by close to 100. Brandon's not even in that 100-point range of me anymore. But speaking of Brandon, he was last place last week, so he gets first pick this week unless he wants to take my strategy and hear my dumb explanation first. But Brandon, who do you want this week?
No, I'll just take Kurt Busch. That's all I got to do.
All right, let's do Kurt Busch for Brandon. Jason.
Oh, give me Kevin Harvick.
You are using Kevin Harvick for the first time this year.
Yes. A track he's kind of good at.
So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to use somebody that I don't plan on using the rest of the year. I don't really know why, but just not a guy that I tend
You won.
No. It's not definitely not a punt. For sure, not a punt. I don't want to make it seem like it's a punt. It's just a guy that I don't know how much I'm going to use him. I haven't used him at all. I think I'm going to probably have to use him at some point. I'm going to use Chris Buescher this week.
Okay.
I think he starts high enough that he can run.
I think you're going to be back more than 100 points behind next week.
That's fine. That's what I'm.
God dang it, man! I keep getting these goddamn Dodge updates, and I getting so pissed that I never bought in. Like, I keep getting these stupid crypto updates. Dodge up 107% over the last 7 days.
Look. The only time to buy into Doge when it was 0.004 cents.
And that's what I keep telling myself. That's why you tell, like, you don't be an idiot and buy in at 60. I told myself, but I said that at when I was at 22. I'm like, don't be an idiot and buy into this at freaking 22 cents. And then it was at 35, and I'm like, don't be an idiot and buy into this shit at 35, and now it's at 61, and I'm like, don't be a goddamn idiot and buy it at 61. If it gets to $300, I don't think it's going to. Obviously, it's going to definitely probably. I would say it's going to crash eventually, but I just keep getting the updates, and you keep thinking, man, why didn't I just pull the trigger a week ago? Why didn't I pull the trigger 2 weeks ago?
Well, next week we'll have Elon Musk on to talk about Bitcoin.
But look, man, who pays in Dogecoin? Like, is this ever going? No, it's not. Bitcoin is the only one that's going to be there. Bitcoin is an actual cryptocurrency that can actually pay for things. Dogecoin is never going to be.
There are companies that are taking it, right? Like the Mavericks and shit, selling tickets.
That's because Cuban's trying to promote everything. He's bought into everything. He's trying to get his
weird, though.
All right. Before Jason tries to drive this train off the tracks, Jason.
NASCAR, fantasy NASCAR.
Was there? Well, we're an hour and 10 minutes or something into this. Is there anything we didn't talk about last week? Is there anything
they quit listening when Brandon said that he's got 2 feet out the door and doesn't care anymore?
Yeah.
No, because
the door is open though. I'm talking to you outside. Yeah.
No, people listen because they like to hate on Brandon just as much as the famous quote is, they don't boo a nobody. So Brandon, when he gets all the hate, is obviously it's because he's not a nobody. Like he said, he's got a following. But Jason, anything else we didn't talk about this week you want to mention?
No, I don't think. I think we're good. I think we covered a lot of drivers here. Always, you guys can hit me up at DFS NASCAR on Twitter. I'm free answers for questions. www.freenascardfs.com is my site. Also, I have been responding to comments in the YouTube channel here, so if you guys want to comment, I can and have put your question there. I'll see it. I'll respond to it there as well.
Brandon, any other final thoughts, or where they can find your stuff that you do with such passion and such a love every single week?
Yeah, if you want to join in on the hate, you can find me at Brandon Cruz DFS on Twitter, YouTube, and on Patreon. And I'm still offering projections. What I am going to do this week is run the optimizer in the live streams. Let's see all the lineups we can create. Let's see all the lineups we can put out there, because everybody already does it. If you look at a lot of shows, not just for NASCAR, but if you look at a lot of shows, they'll run their fantasy cruncher in the background. They'll run other things in the background and show lines and stuff. And for a long time, I've been not wanting to do that, but at this point, we're gonna do that. So we'll be running the optimizer and everything in the live shows this week to see how that goes.
People will complain about you. The people who don't like you are going to complain about you. I got hate when I did it on my live stream, when I went through and for shits and giggles.
Also, is because I know it's supposed to be against.
It's a DraftKings thing. I don't think it's against FanDuel. I don't think it's against FanDuel. I think it's against DraftKings.
And some people get crap about it. Some people don't. What if you don't play that weekend? Is that still against the TOS?
I don't know. That
officially,
they can't ban you if you're not playing on their side.
Yeah, like if I say fuck it and don't play anymore, but I keep putting the optimizer on there, and this isn't one or two. I mean, this is the 300 lineups I usually crunch, the 150 lineups I normally crunch, and I take people in and out on the live stream. Like, what does that do if I don't play?
Right. Yeah. I don't think you can do that.
I gotta look into that, because that might be more fun for me. Is I don't play the contest anymore, but I just show as many lines as I can make.
I can tell you, like, one time in my article, I went through and I wanted to take this approach and talk through the lineup construction and talk through where the chalk line is going to land, and I did that, and I talked through it, and so I gave the lineup, which I said, this is the chalk lineup. This is where everybody's going to land at. And DK emailed me and gave me a warning for putting that on my site, because they said they understood the philosophy behind it, and that I wasn't really given a lineup, but it can be construed against terms and conditions that I posted a lineup.
And on top of that,
they didn't ban me.
No, I got that, but people who they'll be on the DK website making their video, and they'll throw in 6 guys on a line, even if it's a bogus line, that's still a lineup,
right?
Yeah, I mean. And I love DraftKings. I love FanDuel. I love these sites. But yeah, I'll have to really look into that, because I think that'd be a lot of fun. I'll look through the TOS and really dive into it, see what I can do.
Right, and I think really where DK is trying to do is to prevent the lineup sellers, which I think that's definitely bad for the game.
All right, well, I think we've kind of covered most of everything.
You don't want to get into another hour talking about lineup sellers? Come on.
Well, that's basically what we did last week, was we just kind of kept talking about for another hour. But so I thank everyone for joining us as always. You can always catch my stuff, betwithbommel.com. Follow me on Twitter, gambling DFS tips, NASCAR, betting across all other sports, UFC, football, all that stuff when it comes back. As always, we thank you guys for listening. Like we say, you guys are the backbone of the show. The listening and the support is kind of what helps us keep it free and keep you guys, just kind of interested, and hopefully, I don't know what the word is. I guess just interested is the word. Wanting to play NASCAR DFS every week. I think that's kind of the goal, is what we're trying to do here, is put you guys in the best position to succeed. Hopefully, we are doing that. As always, no matter what platform you're on, rate, subscribe, like, review, comment. Jason said he's been, replying to some comments on YouTube. So definitely, if you're looking to comment, YouTube's a good place for that. Just the support, it does much for us. Next week, we are back as always. They are coming to my neck of the woods. We are in Dover, which is about an hour away from me. That's where they'll be next week. So as always, thank you guys for listening. On behalf of Jason and Brandon, as always, I'm Ryan Baumel. And Brandon, as always, the final line is for you. Make sure, and hopefully there are no whammies this week. Thank you guys for listening.